your point about the UK government not being sure how to respond. I mean, I really I do feel for governments besides my own incoming one, because whether or not they're serious about any particular point, you actually don't in Trump 1, sometimes he didn't mean it. And sometimes you could just waste a bunch of time and come up with an okay solution. Like, okay, we got rid of NAFTA, but people spent a bunch of time and money and got the USMCA. But sometimes he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, right? And everybody was basically, if you were invested in preserving that, everybody was worse off for it. So if you're Denmark, now you're spending time on, okay, is he really going to put in tariffs to try to pressure us to sell Greenland? If you're Canada, is he what economic coercion do we need to undergo so that this person can say oh, I tried to make them part of the United States? I can't even believe that we're talking about this, but this is what world governments need to deal with.
It's so hard. If you're Canada, you on the one hand, I might be wrong about this, but I don't seriously think that the next 4 years are going to be characterized by a US-Canada war. But on the other hand, you cannot ignore the president-elect of your neighbor and the biggest economic power in the world saying it would be quite nice if you were a 51st state.
Well, and the problem, yes, exactly. And the problem is, in addition to that person who, okay, whatever, that's the president-elect, you now have this dark twin who wasn't elected, but is the richest man in the world and has thrown in his lot with the president. And so you're now dealing with tweets from the two of them. And I also just want to say, and I'd like to bring in Rohan here, that obviously Musk is a unique figure in many ways in terms of the tweets, in terms of the position to power, in terms of just the sheer amount of wealth. But if you look at what rich guys in the US are doing right now, it is not boldly getting ready to stand up to anti-democratic forces. It is throwing in their lot with anti-democratic forces. You have Jeff Bezos withholding the endorsement at the Washington Post, which just went through layoffs yesterday. Their cartoonist quit because she felt she was being censored. You have Apple CEO Tim Cook giving $1 million to the inauguration. Just yesterday, Just yesterday, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook said, I really think that the people want to go back to the roots of free speech. So we're not going to have fact checking anymore because that has political bias. Instead, we're going to have community notes like Twitter does, which it's not that fact checking at Facebook or Meta was so useful before, but as a friend of mine who used to work in the content moderation space put it, this is just complete anti-democratic capitulation. I can remember years ago being at a conference in Prague and saying basically if we weren't Americans, everyone would understand that we have oligarchs too, right? That you talk about this guy or that guy buying up the Czech or Slovak press and it's oh, the oligarchic takeover of the media. What else do you want to call the owner of Amazon buying up property in DC and also buying the city's largest paper, which in some ways listen, I live in DC. I have friends who work at the Washington Post who have their jobs because of Jeff Bezos. There have been some good things about it. Also, it is a lot of power for a select handful of rich guys who, by the way, were all made richer through this election, to have.